Hello, everyone. Sorry the podcast has been a little off schedule. Life comes up, and when you unfortunately don't get to do this for a living, other things kind of get in the way. But this week I wanted to talk about light meters. Now, a light meter will help you set a scene in a couple of ways, right? So you could go with a brightly lit scene. Let's say you're doing a wedding. It's going to be very brightly lit. Or if you're doing headshots for somebody at work, it's going to be brightly lit. But if you're going to do something like boudoir, you could go either way. It could be very brightly lit, or you may want it to be dimmer. And a light meter will let you see what the impact is going to be. But there's a huge difference between the portrait and boudoir versus a wedding. A light meter, to me, is not as good for an event. Now, weddings are a special type of event, so we're going to set that aside for a moment. But when you're shooting an event that is moving, let's say it's a reenactment that's going on, you're flowing across an outdoor venue, it's going to be very hard to use a light meter to your advantage. Doing a wedding, you could use it because there are certain posed photographs that you're going to make, right? The bride and groom, the entire wedding party. When you're setting those up, having a light meter to help set the scene can help. Now, yes, all of our cameras have light meters in them now, at least the newer ones do. And you can use those, and some of those will, depending on your skill as a photographer, handle certain settings for you. I like to handle all of those for myself. So I'll set my I'll set my shutter speed. I'll set my ISO. In order to do that for a fixed thing, it's much easier. Let's say you're doing boudoir in a studio or even a hotel room. You have control over your environment. You can bring in lighting. Let's say you're shooting it at a hotel room. You kill all of the outside lights, right? You pull the shades, close the doors, turn off the incandescent indoor lights or whatever they're using at this point, and you set up your LEDs or your flashes, and you get the lighting set just the way you want it. Now, personally, I prefer the LED lighting. Flashes have a purpose, right? There's a lot of really cool things you can do with a flash. But if I just want to set a scene, I like the LEDs because I can change the colors and things like that. We'll talk more about that another time. But I can use a light meter to make sure that the spot that I want to be the brightest lit or the darkest lit is where I want it to be. Right? I don't have to rely on my eyes to try to tell me that. I can use a light meter and make slight adjustments up and down. I could also put a mannequin or something in that place, obviously, and try to use my camera for it. But when you've got a fixed place that you're going to shoot, like doing portraits at a wedding, or doing regular portrait photography or boudoir photography, you have more control over your environs. So it makes it easier to go. You can use it to show how bad lighting is going to be, for example, at a wedding venue if you're going to be shooting outdoors, or anywhere that you're shooting outdoors for that matter. And then you can see how that light changes if you have umbrellas and things up. Again, you're in a fixed scenario. You're not chasing a bride across the parking lot as she runs to go see her husband-to-be. You're in a fixed location and you're shooting a portrait. That way you can see how the lighting is going to be impacted by whatever you use, be it you've got a couple of umbrellas, but maybe you want to throw some light up using either a silver or a gold reflector, for example. by having that light meter, you can see what the impact's going to be. You're going to have somebody help you, obviously. You are going to be very difficult to try to do all this stuff with a reflector by hand, but you can get a feel for what the lighting is going to be for that given scenario. Again, in order to do this without a light meter, you're going to have a stand-in. Somebody's going to have to be there, or something is going to have to be there in order for your camera to focus and its light meter pick up what you're trying to focus on to try to get the lighting there. Now, light meters in cameras are fantastic. They are not infallible. So sometimes I need to back things down a little bit because I know that things are going to be a little too bright. The sky is too bright, and now my subject's going to be too dark, or vice versa. So I have to think about what I'm doing. A light meter can help with that. I'll give you a prime example. At Fort Ticonderoga, as you guys know, I do a lot of photography up there. There's a couple of iffy spots there. I love to get the soldiers or the drummers coming through the archway. Now, a lot of people consider that to be the entrance, and it is the entrance that we use to come into the fort. That archway is very long. It's not what you would think of at a wedding venue, for example, where you've got an archway that is about the width of a door. This is several feet deep. And because of that, as soon as they enter that archway, they're almost in darkness. You could throw some light on them from the outside using reflectors. But again, this is an event. I'm just trying to be as out of the way as possible. I don't want to impact the patrons that have come and paid to see these guys walk through. I'm just there to record the event. So I'm not going to have any reflectors in place. I'm not going to have any way to kick the lighting up. But I could use a light meter in that archway to see how bad it's going to be and to figure out what my settings need to be before they walk in, right? Otherwise, I'm waiting for them to walk in there and then making quick adjustments in the viewfinder to spin up my ISO because there's only so much you can do when this comes to shutter speed. People are walking, so you don't want to blur it. At least I don't want to for most of these. And your F is kind of fixed based on your lens. I can go down to a 2.8. Again, because of the distance and things like that, I want all of them in focus, and it's not a straight row, so I have to go out to maybe a 4. So I'm fixed at a 4. I'm fixed at a decent shutter speed, 200th of a second, 300th of a second. Now I have to deal with ISO. And of course, as you know, when ISO goes up, graininess can go up. So you have to work on that particular piece. And by using a light meter, that can help. The other scenario is as they're shooting the muskets, the lake is behind you, the sky is behind you. The beginning of the day isn't as bad because the sun's coming from the other side, but the late afternoon sun lights up that sky and it can blow out the background, which I'll have to fix in post. I want to get them, so I have to go through and handle that in post. But again, having a light meter where they're going to stand can help figure out what that's going to be. So light meters, when you have some control, are much easier to use. When you don't have control, they're not as valuable a tool. And that's what I got for you guys this week, and I'll talk to you all next week.